Trex composite decking is rot and splinter resistant. Wood is not. Trex is insect proof. Wood is not. Trex eliminates time-consuming maintenance. Wood does not. Trex comes with a 25-year fade and stain warranty. Wood does not. So here's the question. Why would you ever choose to build with wood? Make sure your next deck is built with Trex.
Here we are. Good morning. Back and better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. And all right, now this is getting good. For the third consecutive day, we're going to open with the same exact words. The NBA offseason is so much better than the NBA regular season. And today I will add the reason. And it's so simple. Because during the offseason, everyone is trying to win. Except the Knicks. All right, Oleg, we got ourselves a crazy...
Wow,
what in the world is going on here?
And we're still, 6 days away from the NBA award show. Wow, I mean, we've got that right around the corner. After all these trades and the draft, I mean, the whole weekend we will be waiting with bated breath. And, oh, by the way, the NHL award show is tonight. They're doing it before the NBA as well.
What a time this is to be alive.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, but it is amazing what's going on. And you're right, because all teams can get involved. You know, the playoffs are, X amount of teams. Only 90% of the league is the playoffs.
Right, exactly.
And then
except for the Knicks.
And then you're talking about two teams, really.
The playoffs is everybody but the Knicks.
The
offseason is everybody but the Knicks.
But everybody can get involved, whether they're trying to acquire players or trying to get rid of players. It is a fun time, and you really learn about all the intricacies of the NBA and their contracts. That's for sure. It gets pretty convoluted.
Yes, I think they did that just to install another layer of management.
Yeah.
There's like a whole level of employment that every team has to have, and every network and any other media outlet that covers the league has to have people in place who understand this stuff, because there's no normal human being who can possibly make sense of it.
And that person with the Cavaliers will never get an extension either. It's a limited time.
You're on fire this morning.
Early on, I'm on fire.
Golick is feeling good.
Off the top.
All right, let's go off the top. You know who else is feeling good? Is Corey Seager. He had a couple of home runs yesterday, and it seems if you wear a Dodger uniform, you have a tendency to do that.
Yeah, he's only the fourth Dodger with multiple 3-home-run games. He's joining Duke Snider, Sean Green, and Adrian Gonzalez as the only Dodger player in franchise history to do that before turning 24. In fact, there's only one person. He's 23 years old and 23 years and 54 days old. There's only one person that did it younger, and when this person does it, you do it just so you can mention the name Boog Powell. Boog Powell did it at 22 years and 315 days back in 1964. Pretty impressive. You know who else got into the act as well?
Yeah.
Cody Bellinger.
He's unbelievable.
Yeah, he hit his he's the first rookie in Major League Baseball with 10 home runs in a 10-game span, and the first player overall to do that since Troy Tulowitzki did in 2010.
Off the top.
The Hawks have traded Dwight Howard to the Hornets. You know, it's interesting. Dwight Howard is a guy who was a legitimate superstar in the league. That cannot be taken away from him. But it is you're going to have to think pretty hard to figure out a guy of his theoretical stature who has moved around as much in what should still be pretty close to the prime of his career in NBA history to what Howard has now done.
Yeah, most NBA teams played for when you're at least a 5-time first-team All-NBA selection. Shaq leads the way. Shaq was on 6 teams. Dwight Howard 5, Jason Kidd 4, Wilt and Charles Barkley 3 games. You look at his career's 8 seasons in Orlando, and you're just like, wow, what the sky is the absolute limit. He reached the finals, 6-time All-NBA, 5-time first team, 5-time All-Defensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year in 3 straight seasons. And then since 2012, 4 different teams, Lakers, Rockets, Hawks, Hornets, 2-time All-NBA, both second and third team, and his best finish on the defensive side has been tied for 8th, so it's really fallen off since Orlando. I remember when he came in the same. I remember the cover of, I believe it was ESPN, the magazine, was he and Okafor from UConn,
correct,
who had gone his complete time at UConn, and then you had this 19-year-old in
Howard, right out of high school, coming in like the older and the new guy, and boy, oh boy, it started out like a house of fire. But how about him tweeting about, hey, what do you think about the trades going on? And then during that span of people answering, he got traded himself. And I hate to say this, but what does Charlotte want with that? I mean, what are you doing with that in the NBA today?
He's a guy that you look at, and you saw the talent. It was actually realized. I just gave you those 8 years. But, man, it just seems like you didn't get everything you could get out of him.
No, and that part of that is on him. And then part of it now is the game has changed to a place that people who do what he does just aren't valuable
anymore.
Not
a 5 league anymore.
Which is why you want so desperately to spend a lot of money on a guy like Timofey Mozgov.
Off the top.
That's what the Lakers did, but they figured out a way out of that. We are on the verge of the Lakers trading Mozgov and D'Angelo Russell to the Nets for Brook Lopez and a draft pick.
Yeah, it's going to actually cost them a little over $3 million more this year, but next year it could save them over $21 million, which puts them in prime position to grab some free agents out there. Maybe Jeff or Paul George, unless they trade for him before that, but there's a whole lot of free agents, including a guy named LeBron James as well, that will be an unrestricted free agent. So they're gearing up for the future.
2 years ago, D'Angelo Russell was the future of the Lakers.
He was.
Then we had the whole cell phone incident with Swaggy P and everything else, and now he's on his way to Brooklyn.
Off the top.
According to Ari and Begley and The Vertical, the New York Knicks are fielding calls on trading Kristaps Porzingis.
I don't even know where to go with this. I don't even know what to do outside of, I guess it shouldn't be shocking for as much as we're ripping Phil Jackson and the poor job that he seems to be doing and his just absolute unbelievable belief to hang on to the triangle offense. To trade a guy, you just talked about Dwight Howard not fitting into the NBA of today. Could this guy fit in anymore? A 7-footer who can play away from the basket? I mean, this is the league now, and you have a guy, and he's, 15 years old? I mean, are you serious? So, I mean, if you want to try and build, isn't this a guy you build around? I don't get it. I don't understand it one bit. Someone please explain it to me.
I will tell you something that I think should answer that question in a moment.
Off the top.
With definitiveness and clarity. But one more for you here. The Vertical reporting initially that the Spurs' Pau Gasol plans to opt out of his contract, which may not sound like enormously huge news, but in a few minutes you're going to hear Brian Windhorst tell you of all the moves made yesterday, it might prove to be the most impactful.
Yeah, opt out of his $16.2 million deal. He's going to re-sign with them, but he's going to save them money. He's going to save them money so they can do some more. That's what this is all about right now, is getting yourself and your team some cap space to make some moves to try and compete with Golden State.
Exactly right. And that is a very busy Off the Top with Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. More independent agents sell Progressive Insurance than any other brand. Find an agent at Progressive.com. Now that's Progressive.
And by the way, we started off yesterday's show talking about Dwayne Wade. Why don't we just add that in there? And he took his $24 million.
And did you see his tweet?
Yeah.
I kind of liked his tweet.
Well, yeah, I like this tweet too, but it's an old guy tweet. I mean,
he is an old guy.
Well, he is an old guy, but that's what they do. Boy, if I had the stats, now, when I was younger, I'd be making a ton more money. Well, okay, so would a lot of people.
Well, you know what? You're a better man than I, because I think that about you all the time. So Dwayne Wade tweeted, 18.3 points a game in 29 minutes on 43% shooting at 35 years old. If I'm 25 with the same numbers, I'm getting $150 million. Hashtag fading, hashtag petty.
I do like the hashtag petty.
So he's doing it with a wink.
I know he is.
He's also made $200 million.
It's exactly right. Nobody's feeling sorry for him, but that's the way it is. As I said, you don't dribble the ball off your foot. You're making $10, $12 million, and here's a guy, he's right. A different time, and he would be getting one of these ungodly contracts.
Well, the truth is that you were a starting defensive tackle on a defense that yesterday Football Outsiders named the best defense in the NFL in the last 30 years, the 1991 Philadelphia Eagles. And if you were the player that you were today, your contract would be $10 million a year.
It would. I look at it more because, I'm not the player. I look at it more of the time of just missing. When my last deal, I made under $100,000 for 3 years before I even cracked $100,000. My last contract with the Miami Dolphins was $750,000 on a 2-year deal I only saw 1 year of. And then free agency hit. I was in Miami as a free agent, and then big money hit after, kind of right after that. So if I'd have hung around my stats and where I played, I would have been that 3-year, $12 million guy, which would have been a gazillion times more than I was making. So I look at it more there because I just missed that by a year or two. Yeah, jumping me, generations and decades, that's a little tougher. That's so unrealistic. I look, man, if I could have hung on for just a few more years, maybe I could have gotten a little more, but hanging on for 30 more years would have been tough.
Well, I don't think it was I think, you know what? I think with your workout regimen,
you think so?
Cut out the cupcakes. I think you had a fighting chance.
If I went gluten-free a little earlier?
That's really where you missed the boat. All right, let's go through this stuff here. Let's just quickly start with the deal that 100% got made, all done. It's happened, and involves a big name and a big man, although really not, unfortunately, a big star anymore, and that's Dwight Howard. Here's Brian Windhorst with his thoughts on the trade of Dwight Howard to the Hornets.
Dwight has been the victim of injuries. He's had back injuries, he's had knee injuries, so his athleticism has diminished, and the game has changed away from him. But this is a really good value move for the Hornets. They actually wanted to sign him in free agency last year, and they ran out of cap space. They get him for two guys in Miles Plumlee and Marco Bellinelli, who were going to be bit players for them. And they get a guy who's going to be in the middle. And Steve Clifford, their coach, has a good relationship with him. He coached him in Orlando and L.A. He's a defensive-first coach. One thing Dwight Howard can still do is play defense. So he comes in here, unlike in Houston, unlike in L.A., unlike even in Atlanta, with low expectations. I actually think he's got a chance to find a home in Charlotte.
Okay, find a home, but how's he going to play?
Well, exactly what will he be? That's the question. The most important point that Windhorst made there, I thought, was at the very end. He's not coming in there now with the whole world saying, well, now they've got him, so that X will happen. If he just shows up, finds a role, if he's content to just show up and find a role. This last year, his numbers weren't so bad during the regular season.
No, they were not.
But everyone made a big deal of the fact that in the biggest moments of the playoff games, he wasn't playing. And that's because you can't. They played a tough 6-game series in that first round with Washington, and you can't play a guy who doesn't do what he doesn't do and also can't make foul shots in big moments of games. So, that was what he seemed to be frustrated by. But if your expectation of him is that he's going to come in, he's going to start, he's going to be a rim protector, he's going to play defense and get rebounds and score 12 points a game for you, and that's all you expect of him, I think he can do that, right?
Yeah, but let's go. The Rockets, when he left the Rockets after they didn't choose to re-sign him, the Rockets saw a 14-win improvement. And the Hawks saw.
So let's do that slower. So he left after the 2 years ago, and then this past year they won 14 more games than they had the year before.
Than they had with Dwight Howard. And the Hawks had Dwight Howard on their team this year, and they won 5 less games than they did the year before.
Right.
And listen, you can't put it all on one guy, but there's still the numbers out there, and you're looking at a Charlotte team that was 10 games under 500, missed the playoffs by 5 games. So. Okay, we'll see. His again, as we talked about, his 5 style isn't the style of the NBA anymore. He is a rim protector. We'll see what he brings. They obviously did it for a reason. The coach is familiar, as Wendy said, with him. We'll see where it goes. This was a deal that involved a name, but a deal that I think, from the league standpoint, as far as the competition level is concerned, is pretty inconsequential.
And then there's one that would be enormously consequential. If you're watching us on television right now, you see behind us the logo of the NBA. And I know Jerry West has said lately that he doesn't like being the logo, and someday they'll change the logo. When they change the logo will be of someone who is 7 feet tall shooting a 3. Yeah. It doesn't matter who it is, but that's what the league is now. Kevin Durant falls into that category. Mm-hmm. And all other great players in the league will fall into that category. And when you get one of them, you hold, and especially when they're 21 years old and seem to have a lot of life and fun and all that charisma and everything else in the world, you hold on to them for dear life. A miracle has befallen you. And then the stories come out that the Knicks are actually willing to trade Kristaps Porzingis, and the whole league and the whole world goes completely crazy. Now, let me sort of try and calm everything down a little bit. Do I believe the Knicks are going to trade Porzingis? I do not. And I guess I say that only because I can't believe it. My initial reaction to it yesterday when the story broke on Twitter was, the best way for Phil Jackson to get fired tomorrow is to tell everyone in the world he's going to trade Kristaps Porzingis today. Because the one thing I have to believe James Dolan wouldn't let him do, for all of the, you can do whatever you want, ask Phil.
Right. You're the football guy or the basketball guy.
You can't trade that guy. I mean, you cannot trade away Kristaps Porzingis. And let me make this as simple as I can. If you put Kristaps Porzingis in this year's draft, where would he go?
He'd go number one.
Absolutely, right? I mean, there would be no talking about it. People would be talking about this like it was the Ewing lottery.
Yeah.
Porzingis is available. They'd be losing their minds. Markelle who? Josh Jackson who? I mean, you got to be out of your mind. So if the Knicks trade Kristaps Porzingis, I genuinely think you could describe it as a breach of fiduciary responsibility, and it would be worthy of firing with cause.
With cause,
like he could fire him and not give him his $24 million.
Maybe that's what Phil's really wanting to get out of there, so he says this is his best way.
That's what I'm saying.
I tried to get fired by signing Carmelo to that, giving him a no trade clause.
And then I tried to get fired by criticizing him publicly.
Yeah.
And no matter what I do, Dolan just keeps picking up my option because I'm a human shield for him in the public. But so what? Now what do I have to do to get my $24 million and get the hell out of New York in the wintertime? Okay, here's what I'll do. I'll tell the world I'm going to trade Porzingis, and then he'll have to fire me. I have no better reason for it.
I don't either. I mean, if you ever want to get better, he is the player of today. There's no way you can get rid of him. You just build around him, however long it takes, and hope he doesn't want to leave. And which he talked about when he didn't go to his exit interview already this year, didn't like what was going on. So they're doing a great job. They stink, and they're making their best player going into the future not real happy. So kudos.
Extremely not happy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually to the point that it's ridiculous. Did you see the quotes? Let me quickly open the story for you here from the Daily News, and we're going to have Frank Isola coming up in a few minutes here with his reaction. This one was from Steph Bondi, who wrote the story. So this is a quote. In Latvia, where Porzingis is right now, his brother Janis, I hope that's how you pronounce it, Janis, works with the agency that represents Kristaps Porzingis. And this is his quote. Despite how the Knicks are treating their players, Chris wants to stay in New York. That's a direct quote from his brother. I mean, he's putting that caveat. Despite how the Knicks are treating their players, Chris wants to stay in New York. He loves the city. He loves the fans. He wants to win with this team. If he's going to be traded, he's going to play out his contract and decide his future on his own. So they're smart enough to know. We're telling the world he's not signing any place. You want to trade for him, you're just getting him for the moment. He's going to play out his rookie deal, and he's going to wind up someplace he wants to be. He wants to be in New York, and he knows he'll outlast Phil Jackson.
Yeah, he will. And listen, he is what he has been able to do there, and the thought of trading him. And we're talking again about another team that it's the Knicks, so it's a big-name team, but it's inconsequential. They're a bad team. They're not going to be good for a while. You want to put this in and start to throw it to a team that matters. Celtics have a ton of assets.
Yep.
Boy, what a time to throw them all to try and get that guy. If he truly is on the trade block, go get him. I mean,
can you imagine trading him to a team in your division that, in theory, is your
but I couldn't
historical
imagine
rival?
his name coming up in trade talks. If his name ever came up in trade talks, it should have been immediately squelched. Are you kidding me? We're not trading this guy. He's untouchable. You know how we always say, always answer the phone? I'm not answering the phone if you call about him. But that's not being said. So you know what? You throw what you can at the Knicks and see if you can get that guy.
There are two players in NBA history who had 1,000 rebounds, 150 made threes, and 100 block shots through their first two seasons. One of them is LeBron James. The other one is Kristaps Porzingis. The list is now over. Now, blocks didn't become a stat until 1973, and threes didn't come into the league until 10 years after that, and we all understand that big men didn't start shooting threes until recently. This is not to say that he's better than Wilt Chamberlain. It is, however, to say he's overwhelmingly the best thing that has happened to the Knicks in 15 years.
Yeah, one of the biggest things is he is as I said, the game today. He's the 7-footer who can move and play away from the basket. This is where we are. And it just stuns me. And if I'm Danny Ainge, forget the call. I'm driving to New York, and I'm saying, Phil, let's sit down and talk. Let's hammer this deal out.
Here's my roster. Who do you want?
Exactly.
I mean, the Celtics are a really good team.
Three pick.
They were the number 1 seed of the Eastern Conference. There isn't a player on their team you wouldn't trade for him.
No, and you'd give up the number 3 pick in a heartbeat. He's
better than any player that might get drafted there. We're going to continue with all this in a moment, but I did want to get this in early because you're going to love this. Mike and Mike brought to you in part by the free 18 Birdies app. Make your phone the best club in your bag. I just came across one story. Golf Digest. You know how much I love Golf Digest.
Yes, I do.
So I'm going through some of the stories about Brooks Koepka winning the U.S. Open this weekend. And, caddies, on average, receive 5 to 10% of their players' earnings. Mm-hmm. And with a good finish, they usually get a higher cut of that. So, for example, Michael Greller, who was Spieth's caddy, made over $2 million that year that Spieth won all those tournaments. So they interviewed Ricky Elliott, who was Brooks Koepka's caddy, after Koepka won at Erin Hills. The payout for Koepka was $2.16 million.
Yep.
So the estimation is that Elliott is going to get north of $200,000. Only 1.5% of Americans make that in a year. Elliott just made that in a weekend.
Right.
And so they asked him, what are you going to do with your share of the money? You want to hear what his answer was?
Does it involve food?
Pretty close. The only thing you like even better than food. He said, I'm going to go buy a 12-pack of Heineken.
There you go.
That was his response.
Oh, he's going for the big beer.
Now, one small problem. Brooks Koepka's sponsor is Michelob Ultra. So we had a little bit of an issue there with the caddy-player agreement.
Yeah.
Right? So the caddy is supposed to sort of, you would think he would know that. He's walking behind him or next to him and standing there at all times.
Yeah.
It says Michelob Ultra right there on his shirt. So you would think that he would have known that, but whatever. He's got $200,000 that he made over a 4-day stretch of time, and he is going to go buy himself a 12-pack of Heineken.
Let me tell you what, that Heineken will never taste so good.
That is a man right up your alley.
That's a great job out of him. Nothing crazy, just a Heineken. And we can get into it at some point. Speaking of caddies, how about Bones and Phil Mickelson?
Yes, a big surprise.
After
a big
25
surprise.
years.
And the veto part of that story I like,
too. That's a really good one. We'll get into that.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's hard. I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym. It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
Hey everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Twitter reaction, 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Steven tweets, Kristaps to the Celtics would be a championship. Philip tweets, Phil Jackson is like George Costanza trying to get fired from the Yankees so he can work for the Mets. #bodysuit man.
I'd like to go right down to Jake at the end. Jake Justice. Porzingis would have a tough time cracking the top 5 in this year's draft.
In what sport? In basketball, he'd be first.
Yeah, and I don't even know where to go with that, Jake. You're certainly entitled to your opinion.
No, you're not. You're not entitled to that opinion.
I think that's crazy. I think he's the number 1 pick without question.
No, he's not entitled to that. I'm sorry. You're giving him too much credit. Jake Justice is not entitled to that opinion.
I'm trying to be nice that everyone can have an opinion. Some can be so far-fetched and so wrong, as in this case, but he's allowed to have an opinion.
Let's bring Frank Isola into this conversation. Covers the Knicks and the NBA for the Daily News, and you see him on Around the Horn and everything else. And Frank, there's sometimes when you say things because they just sort of feel like you can't believe they're true. I don't think that Phil Jackson in his mind really is trying to get fired here so he can walk away with $24 million. But I can't think of a better reason to talk about trading Kristaps Porzingis. Can you give me one?
I don't know what it would be either. I don't think he's trying to get fired either. He's making pretty good money doing what he wants to do. He hasn't had success, and he still maintains his job, so he has job security. So I don't think he's trying to get fired. I do think that he believes that he can find something better out there than Kristaps Porzingis, and whether or not it's this kid Lauri Markkanen from Arizona, I don't know about that because he's unproven. At least, with Kristaps Porzingis, he's a proven player. Now, he also has been hurt at the end of both his rookie season and last season. The Knicks have lost a lot of games with him, but he's a young player. He turns 22 at the beginning of August, so I don't know why the Knicks aren't trying to be patient here, unless they think, you know what, let's go for a complete rebuild, get rid of Porzingis completely all over again.
Let's put him on hold there with Trent, because it's important to hear what he's saying.
I can't even fathom that. He's 21 years old. You're talking about trading him so you can get a 19-year-old in there?
He is a total rebuild, right?
Yes, he's who you rebuild around. He is get rid of everybody else and let's rebuild around the guy that fits the NBA right now. I just don't understand it. And as far as Phil and security, I mean, quite honestly, he gets fired, he gets his money. So what's better than working for 2 years and making $24 million?
Not working for 2 years?
Not working for 2 years and making $24 million.
And the thing about Lauri Markkanen, who's I think he's from Finland, right? But he played at Arizona. The Knicks could draft him. He'll be there at 8.
Yes, he will.
So
yes, he will.
It's not like they have to trade away Porzingis to get him. Now, I get it. If you think he could be the same thing as Porzingis,
player to stretch
you trade for someone else, and you get whether it's Josh Jackson that they like or Jason Tatum or one of the point guards, and then you still get him. I understand that.
Would be amazing to me to look at to Markkanen and say, oh, yeah, he's better than what we're seeing out of Porzingis, and that's what we want.
Is the injury concern? Look, whenever you've got a guy who's that big,
right,
who moves the way a guy like him does, you always worry a little bit about the feet. And we see injuries, and we've seen them everywhere from Sam Bowie and Bill Walton and Greg Oden, and now you have these concerns with Joel Embiid. That part of it, I guess, I do have some understanding of. I get the notion of being concerned about his injuries, but let me rephrase then. I will restate my feelings. You had better get a king's ransom. I mean, you had better get a heck of a lot more than the number one pick in this draft, because Markelle Fultz or Lonzo Ball or Josh Jackson or Jason Tatum, if everything goes perfectly, 2 years from now, you'll say, maybe you'll say they've got a chance to be as valuable as Porzingis looks like he's going to be.
All right, Frank Isola from the New York Daily News is back. And so we know Porzingis didn't go to his exit interview, which players in all sports normally do to talk to the coach before they leave. Has there been communication since then? What's the relationship with he and the Knicks?
Well, the only communication was with Phil Jackson and Kristaps' brother Giannis and Andy Miller, Kristaps' agent. But there has been no communication with the Knicks and Kristaps, which makes no sense. And you have a player that young, that valuable, why wouldn't you be talking to him? Why wouldn't you have a coach over in Latvia working with him like just about every team in the league would have with their best young stars? So that part of it makes no sense. And the relationship right now isn't very good.
They fired the assistant coach that he liked the most. Why, Frank? I mean, why is this happening? For all the other things that are happening around them, why has this turned into a problem? First of all, why was Porzingis so upset at the end of last season in the first place?
Yeah, I don't think he was happy with the direction of the franchise, number one. Is it maybe a young kid being a little immature? That's probably a factor. We shouldn't excuse him for what he did. When your bosses call you into a meeting, you have to show up. So there's a lot of things that he's upset about, with the coaching. He feels like they get on him a little bit too much and maybe let other players get away with some things. So the situation right now is a mess, and it made no sense to get rid of that young assistant coach. I know the Knicks are going to try to spin it like, he was poisoning Kristaps a lot. It's just because he had a close relationship with Kristaps Porzingis. So they got rid of the coach, which to me was a bit of a vindictive move by the Knicks to try to hurt Kristaps, and it certainly bothered him. There's no question about that.
So, speaking of a mess, as you are, what's going on with Melo?
You know what? That's an interesting one. He really has kept a low profile throughout all this. Hey, guys, let's think about it. Can you imagine if Carmelo Anthony had blown up his exit meeting? How much we'd be killing for Carmelo over that. So Carmelo's been laying low. I don't think he wants to be back in New York, but it's going to be a matter of, can the Knicks agree to a trade? Can they get a team to agree to a trade? And then can you get Carmelo to say, yes, I'll go to that team? I still think there's a chance the Clippers, maybe the Cavs, can he get a buyout, then become a free agent? Then he can go anywhere he wants, including Cleveland. So right now the situation with Carmelo is uncertain. The situation with Kristaps Porzingis is uncertain. So the Knicks are in mid-season form.
Mike and Frank Isola. When we get to the first night of the regular season, what uniform will Paul George be wearing, and what uniform will Jimmy Butler be wearing?
That's a good one. I'll put Paul George on the Cavs, Jimmy Butler still on the Chicago Bulls. How about that?
I love it. And George would go for Love?
I guess that would be the move. It'd be probably some kind of complicated deal with the third team. LeBron knows he's got to get, his team has to get better to beat the Golden State Warriors. The Cleveland Cavaliers know that LeBron's under contract for one more year. So when you have a player that's, as great as LeBron, you have to do everything you can to try to win right now. And, then who knows what happens after next season. A lot of people tend to think he's going to go out to L.A. I think that's probably 80% true as of right now.
And what did you make of the timing of the departure of David Griffin from the Cleveland organization? 3-4 days before the draft, up to his elbows, we're told, in these trade conversations, practically up to the very minute they threw him out the door.
Yeah, none of it really ever makes a lot of sense. I had heard around the deadline that LeBron wanted them to do a lot of stuff, and they had to kind of tell him, listen, we can't do everything that you want us to do. And I understand that LeBron came out right away and said, hey, I always, supported you, and I appreciated the work that you had done. But with LeBron, you never know. Is he saying that? Is he being sincere? Is he doing it to kind of cover himself a little bit? You never know the true story. It is odd. And, Dan Gilbert has lucked into LeBron a couple of times. And you have a player like that, I'm not saying you have to do everything that he wants, but if it's true that LeBron wanted David Griffin back, why wouldn't you bring him back? And then again, who's to say that David Griffin wanted to come back? Maybe he felt like the thing was going in the wrong direction. Maybe he felt it was somewhat dysfunctional. But it's sad because a year ago, as you guys were covering it, they had a great parade and everything was, looking great in Cleveland. They should still be a terrific team. As of right now, they're still the best team in the Eastern Conference. But it's a bad situation. You're getting rid of your GM right before the draft and right before free agency starts. Not a good look for their organization.
No, it's stunning. Finally, very quickly, Frank, just assess for us the percent chance the Knicks actually do trade Kristaps Porzingis. Is it 5%? Is it 25%? What are you thinking?
I think it's lower than 25%. I think they have to be blown out of the water, and rightfully so. I mean, you got to get a great deal if you're going to trade a player of that caliber. Hey, nothing wrong with seeing what's out there. But by the same token, the kid is already ticked off to begin with. Now, I don't know how he's going to feel now that they know that he's been floating his name out there in trade talk. So the situation, when he shows up in New York in September, early October, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it is.
And you'll be there. Frank, always appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Frank Isola, Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today.
I agree with him about Jimmy Butler and Paul George. I think Butler will end up staying in Chicago. I think George will be in Cleveland. I think the Lakers are trying to steal George. They're not giving up Ingram. They're not giving up the number 2 pick, nor should they. They shouldn't. If you can steal him, steal him. If you can't, wait. He's going to be with you next year. And Paul George, as you said, I'll take the cheapest joke out there. He's actually going to go for Kevin Love. He's not going to go for Love. That would be, I don't know, kind of comparing that.
I follow you.
You know what I'm talking about?
I've got a story here that suggests that both of those are complicated. We'll get into it and more as we go. It's a very busy morning. These stories that get out there, whether they're reported by Adrian Wojnarowski or Mark Stein or David Aldridge or Brian Windhorst or any of Dave McMenamin or all the many Ramona Shelburne reporters that are out there covering the league. They get out there because someone gives them this information. Someone is passing that information along to them, and that someone always has a reason they want it out. This is not nefarious. I'm not suggesting anything wrong is going on here. But you have a reason why you want that out there. If this did come from the Knicks, if the Knicks did want it out there in the conversation, in the zeitgeist, that they are entertaining trade talks for Kristaps Porzingis, what would the reasons be?
I have no idea. I have zero clue.
Are they trying to send a message to him? Because they're mad at him. Because
at the end of the day, he's going to have control over what he does. He's under contract. Why would you do that? Why in this day and age of kid gloves are you making your best player mad? Why would you do that?
Are you trying to flex your own muscle and say, "Hey, kid, you're 21 years old.
0 cents.
You don't blow off exit interviews.
0 cents for the organization to do it." I could see it from Chris's side.
From
his side of
Porzingis'
it.
side.
Absolutely, saying he doesn't like it there, and publicly he'll say, I want to be there, but behind closed doors saying, get me the hell out of here. Or another team just throwing some, stirring the kindling there to get that fire going a little bit because they know what a stud he could be if they could get him. But the Knicks, I can't think of one good reason. And if that's the reason, we'll show that 21-year-old. We'll teach him a life lesson. Please.
It wouldn't make – I agree with you. It would probably be a non-impactful
you think
thing, but I don't think it's impossible.
Well, given how that organization has been going, you're right, it's not.
Look at some of the stuff that goes on. If you're telling me that's beyond the realm of possibility, I'm going to tell you I don't think I see it that way.
No, I didn't say beyond the realm. I think the lowest on the rung, though, as far as I'm concerned.
Greg Harden tweets at us, if the Knicks can deal Porzingis to get De'Aaron Fox in the draft, you do that deal in a second. Greg, no, you don't.
What?
De'Aaron Fox might turn out to be a really good player. The one thing he'll never be under any circumstances is 7'2".
No, he will not.
Scott tweets, if Stephen A. is correct, why would Phil sabotage his legacy like that? I think that Phil is a different person than people think he is. Like, I remember my impression of him when I first was around him on a daily basis was what people think of him and what he actually is are so totally different. You know what Phil Jackson is? He's a basketball coach.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of different ideas. He's a very intelligent man. Yeah. Very intelligent man. And he is an interesting person who is genuinely interested in Zen Buddhism and all that stuff. And he reads books that most people in sports probably don't. But at the end of the day, he's a basketball coach.
He is a basketball coach, and for the millions of people listening and watching who will never get to know Phil Jackson more than they know him right now, they don't care. All they see is he was a great basketball coach and is really doing a horrible job running this organization. They don't care about the books that he gave players to read, or any of his Zen, or any of his meditation, or any of that. They just see what a poor job he's doing, and that's the extent of it.
All right, let's move to something else here for a moment. Straight Talk brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. I'm all for experimentation. I'm all for moving outside the box. I'm all for trying different and new things.
You won't go in a shark cage.
There are some things. But that's stupidity.
Okay.
But it isn't. It shouldn't. I'm not suggesting that a person who goes in a shark cage should be prosecuted. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm not suggesting that should be deemed a criminal offense. But this should. I read to you from a story in Sports Illustrated.
Okay.
And I genuinely believe that some prosecutor should look into this. Ice cream shops specialize in sweet flavors that cool off your taste buds after having a hot slice of pizza on a summer day, right? Mm-hmm. All right, you have a little pizza. You want a little something that cools you off on a hot summer day, right?
Sure,
pizza, it's hot. Right. Got a little ice cream for you. While many of these shops can bring you interesting and unexpected flavors, it's pretty rare you find yourself basically eating a second dinner while getting dessert. There is an ice cream parlor in Philadelphia called Little Babies. It's an offbeat ice cream parlor, and their latest and greatest, and I use that word advisedly, invention is pizza-flavored ice cream. It's made with tomato, oregano, salt, basil, and garlic. I will say once again, in my opinion, the authorities should look into this, and I believe that there is at least a possibility that criminal charges should be brought.
I agree.
If you make pizza ice cream, in my opinion, you have violated something very, very, very
And it's not the only violation. There's cucumber dill, ranch, and Earl Grey sriracha ice cream.
Those are flavors of ice cream.
Flavors of ice cream. No.
That's not ice cream.
No.
That has ceased to be ice cream.
I completely. Where we disagree with the pineapple on the pizza, and we can disagree.
Also criminal.
We do disagree. I disagree. I don't like it, but I have no problem if somebody wants to do it. But an ice cream flavored that way to pizza, or cucumber dill or ranch, if you want cucumber dill, go get some cucumber dill. Don't get the ice cream that tastes like it.
Would you eat
pizza-flavored
ice cream?
I'd eat pizza. End of sentence.
Exactly right.
End.
It's a perfect example of how you can take your two favorite things in the world, put them together, and they stop being good.
That's exactly right.
I love pizza.
Right.
I love ice cream.
Not together.
I don't mind them together, but not as one.
Yeah.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's hard. I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym. It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
Well, Greeny, looks like our last baseball season together.
Yeah, we're rounding third and walking off winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business with instant free nights at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
Just pull up with no reservation and redeem La Quinta Returns loyalty points for a free night that same night just by using the La Quinta app.
That's like hitting a grand slam.
With the La Quinta app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out their summer rates at lq.com. NBA offseason. It's their best season. It's actually the best part of the NBA calendar year.
Amazing, because so much has to get in before the draft even happens.
Yeah.
So.
And as you said, we got the celebration.
Monday night after the draft, we can all sit down, take a breath, and get ready for the award show Monday night.
But really, the regular season is all about the resting and the tanking. The postseason was a foregone conclusion. Mm-hmm. The off season is pretty good.
Yeah, it is.
We got a lot of action. We got a lot of intrigue. We got everybody actually trying to win. It's sort of a delightful little respite from the mundane part of the year where they're actually playing basketball.
Yeah.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And as we embark upon yet another NBA draft, it is our pleasure to bring in America's foremost expert on all things Star Wars and NBA draft related. Our friend Chad Ford is here with his perspective. Good morning, Chad.
May the force be with you.
Well, there you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is the force with the Knicks? Before we get it, is there a player in this draft that if you would trade Kristaps Porzingis for?
No. Absolutely not. If the Celtics came and said, I'll give you the number 3 pick and I'll give you the Nets pick next year, which might be the number 1 pick, my answer would still be no. Porzingis, I think, is that good. It's absolutely bananas that the Knicks would think about
just
moving
so
him.
Everybody understands what you're saying, because people are still tweeting it in. If Porzingis was in the draft this year,
he'd be number 1 by a mile.
By a mile. Okay. Thank you.
Knowing what we know about him now, yes.
Well, that's the only place we are right now.
Right.
There are people that, one of the last tweets was, boy, if they could trade him to get De'Aaron Fox, that would be a fantastic trade. I don't get it. I don't understand what people are thinking.
I think this is part of the draft, though. It was the same thing with Paul George for the number 2 pick. Look, we put so much on these draft prospects. They can be whatever we want them to be, right? Because they haven't actually played yet in the NBA. And so I have Lakers fans saying, there's no way I'd give up the number 2 pick for Paul George. And I'm like, Paul George is a top 15 player in the NBA. We hope and dream and pray that Lonzo Ball someday down the road might be a top 15 pick in the NBA, or a player in the NBA.
But I wouldn't give up the number 2 pick either, because George is going to go there next year. I'd roll the dice. I would roll the dice. I would try and steal like they're doing. They're not giving up Ingram. They're not giving up the number 2 pick. I would try and lowball them and steal them if you can. If not, wait till next year, because I think he's going there anyway.
Look, I agree with that, but there is a risk there that I don't think we're talking about. And it's 2 things. One, there's a player here who's telling the Lakers, I want you to trade for me right now. Right? I want to play in L.A. I'm a superstar. I want to go there. For the Lakers to say, hey, I know you want to play for us, but we don't want to give up any assets for you, so just go hang out somewhere else for a year and wait. And by the way, we won't get your bird rights because of that, which means we're going to have to pay you about $40 million less. And by the way, go play with LeBron James in Cleveland, maybe compete for another title, maybe even win another title, and then decide, hey, I'm going to leave $40 million on the table, go to L.A. And play with all these young guys. That's a risk on the Lakers' part, too. And I think that
it is.
You have to consider that.
Yeah, because not only might he decide he likes it in Cleveland, but it also opens the door up to a lot of other possibilities. Who knows what's going to be going on with the Clippers by then? They didn't bring in Jerry West for no reason, right? Jerry West is the closer. Jerry West is the guy who brought Shaq to the Lakers. He's the guy who brought Kevin Durant to the Warriors. And I read a column yesterday that suggests, Chad Ford, that Jerry West's job number 1 is to bring LeBron James to the Clippers.
Yes, and I think that we're starting to see the writing on the wall there about what might be next for LeBron. Of course, the Lakers would like to be in that sweepstakes as well. And it's part of the reason that they gave away D'Angelo Russell as part of that Mozgov deal, is not just to clear the way for Paul George, but to clear the way for 2 max contracts coming into next summer. That's what the Lakers are up to, and there'll be a compelling case as well for LeBron.
Cleveland fans are just looking at that wall that the writing is on and just saying, "Are you kidding me again?"
But wouldn't that be remarkable? Let's just play this thing out in a way that it could theoretically happen. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but it could happen. Paul George could wind up in Cleveland this year. He and LeBron could play together. They could be great. They do seem to respect and like each other. They could play together. They could be great. They could even win a championship and then go together. Leave there and go together to the Lakers because the Lakers will have the money. I mean, it's just craziness, but that's where the league is right now.
It is, though. I think that maybe the narrative will change in Cleveland if Paul George is there and they're winning a title there. I think part of this is LeBron's frustration with the owner again, frustration about what's the direction of the franchise, and I think that it's a little premature to say LeBron's gone to L.A. I think it's going to have a lot to do with what happens this summer and what happens during the season and whether LeBron feels like Cleveland has a path to continue to be competitive to winning an NBA title.
I agree with that. I have definitely pumped the brakes. I know a lot of people are going down that road. I'm kind of in the not so fast, my friends, as far as LeBron taking off to L.A.
Chad Ford is here with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Okay, I'm thinking about this, Chad. You just mentioned that Porzingis would be the number one pick if he were in this year's draft. Let's go back to the draft in which he was picked, number 4. Karl Anthony Towns went 1. Yes. If you redid that draft, he'd still go 1.
Absolutely.
Number 2 was D'Angelo Russell. The Lakers just basically gave him away. Number 3 was Jahlil Okafor, right? Who averages, like 15 points a game, and they can't give him away. Yeah. The Sixers couldn't give him away to a team. It's crazy the way that a player like him, who once upon a time in the NBA would have been what everyone was dying for,
all-star,
has zero value now.
The league has completely changed. It just has, and you're seeing that in the draft and prospects that in a normal draft a decade ago would be top 5, top 6 picks that are now struggling to get in the lottery now. The league's changed, and I think that D'Angelo Russell hasn't changed. I mean, he was considered a good prospect as well, but I think the Lakers were shocked. They were trying to get another top 10 pick, whether that was to select for themselves or to be able to give that to Indiana as part of the Paul George deal. There were no takers. They went into the back end of the lottery with D'Angelo Russell. No takers for D'Angelo Russell. Now, that's a little bit shocking when you actually look at his statistics, especially towards the end of last season. D'Angelo Russell actually had a pretty good year, especially in the second half of the season for a 21-year-old point guard. I think that's more about his reputation in the locker room or about him than it was him as a player. But, man, getting the 27th pick in Brook Lopez for D'Angelo Russell, that's shocking.
As far as this draft, you had Boston with the number 1 pick. They loved it so much they traded it to go to number 3. Markelle Fultz still looks like he's going to go number 1, but is this kind of a sign of where we are in this draft that the Celtics felt, well, we know he'd be number 1, but we have a different guy in mind, maybe Tatum, that we can get at 3 for him. So does that kind of say it's not Markelle Fultz and then everybody else? It's pretty close amongst the top guys?
I think the Celtics are in the minority right now in saying that Markelle Fultz and maybe Lonzo Ball aren't in a clear tier by themselves. I think most teams would have said Fultz and or Ball were in a tier all by themselves. The Celtics have not believed that all year, and that's actually been consistent. I think that's a message that Danny Ainge is now making up because they made the trade. He's been very consistent all year that that's how he's seen it. I think Markelle Fultz is the best player in this draft, but I would say with everybody in this draft, it's all situational. It's all about finding the right fit, the right team, the right coach. Markelle Fultz and the 76ers is a perfect match for him and for the 76ers. This is where he maxes out his career. This is where I think the perfect guy to play with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. The Sixers, it was perfect deal for them. I don't think he was as good a fit on the Celtics, and I think that was part of what they were looking at. Josh Jackson, to me, is the Celtics player. I mean, that's the type of player that Danny Ainge loves and that Brad Stevens loves, a multi-positional player that can get it done on both ends of the court, high basketball IQ, elite motor, can pass the basketball. His only problem, and this is a problem for the Celtics, is that he's not a good shooter. Right. And they have lots of players on that roster that aren't particularly good shooters. And again, the way the league's evolving, that is an issue. But man, I love Josh Jackson.
So you don't think it would be Tatum who can be that scorer?
I think there's 2 reasons it could be Tatum. One is Josh Jackson's refused to come in and do a workout. He wants an assurance that the Celtics are going to keep the pick. Danny Ainge isn't going to make that assurance. And he wants an assurance that if he does come in, that he was the top guy on their board. So unless he he screws this workout up, that's who they were going to take, right? Because people laugh at that, but these players risk injury when they go in to these workouts. They really do. He comes in and he tears an ACL or something that workout, he plummets in the draft. So you're only going to work out if you know that team is very serious about taking you with that pick. And I think you got to give the kid, and especially his agent, a little bit of credit. They're trying to protect him right now. And if the Celtics are shopping this pick around to everybody right now, and it's not even clear that they'd take him if he comes in, does he really risk a day before the draft coming in and going through an intense workout and maybe getting an injury?
From the other side of that, from a team's side, when they see a player that doesn't want to come in, does that team think differently about that player?
I think, especially with a team like the Celtics that are so good at scouting, and Danny Ainge is probably the most active general manager in the league at getting out and scouting all these guys, they don't need to see him do the basketball stuff. I think that their concern right now is about the medical, right? They don't have the medical information. They'd love their doctors to get a look at him. They'd at least like to get the information. Again, why is this camp not giving that to the Celtics? Because they could do that. I think the answer, too, is that they look and say, hey, he plays on the Celtics. Does he get 15 minutes a night, maybe 20 minutes a night, where he could go to Phoenix at 4 and be playing 35 minutes a night, right? And I think that's, again, part of the calculation of an agent trying to figure out, how do I put my player in the best position?
Maximize, yeah.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests like Bomani Jones coming up shortly on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Right now, our draft expert, Chad Ford, is in our studio. Lonzo Ball, most talked about player in this draft by a mile, and we all understand the reasons why. Down at its core, I saw you did this. You separated the players by tier, and you had two players on a tier unto themselves. One was Fultz, the other is Ball. Why is he better than De'Aaron Fox and the other guys who do similar things?
Well, I think that there's one thing about Lonzo Ball that stands out. He is the best passer that I've seen in a draft in the last decade. And I was saying that last year about Ben Simmons, but Lonzo's more of a point guard. I mean, it's otherworldly. The way he passes the basketball and makes everyone around him better. And it's really interesting. When you talk to a lot of just NBA scouts, they'll tell you Markelle Fultz is the best player in the draft. If you've talked to ex-players, right, who are doing scouting or are in the front offices and ask them who the best player in the draft is, they all point to Lonzo Ball. He has that it factor. There's something about the way he sees and feels the game that other elite ex-players look at and recognize as a talent that is unique. And look, I think Lonzo Ball is going to be great, again, if he's on the right team. The Lakers are that right team. Luke Walton is the right coach, and especially if they're going to bring in Paul George and players maybe like even LeBron James. I mean, this is the type of guy that these guys are going to want to play with because he's unselfish. He's always going to make the right decision with the basketball. He can stretch the floor and do some things as well. And all this stuff about LeVar Ball, look, if LeVar Ball wasn't in the picture, I think that we wouldn't even be having this discussion about whether Lonzo Ball was the 1 or 2 pick in the draft. I think this whole LeVar Ball thing has been a distraction, but I don't think it reflects on the kid himself. Right. He's a very different individual than his dad.
So no chance you think the Lakers pass on Ball?
Not anymore.
And what does any more mean? When were they?
I think that they Rob Pelinka and Magic Johnson really felt they're both new at their jobs, that they needed to bring in everybody, do intense workouts, do intense background checks, and make sure that Lonzo was the guy for them. And I think they were very open to selecting a De'Aaron Fox or a Josh Jackson if they came out of the process ahead. I think that process has completed now for the Lakers, and they've decided that Lonzo Ball is their guy unless they end up trading this pick on draft night.
Mike and Mike, Chad Ford. I'm not a draft expert like you are. I just watched the game. I sat 4 nights in a row and watched Jason Tatum win the ACC tournament by himself playing for Duke. And the thought going through my mind was, oh, there's the number 1 pick in the draft. I'm watching a guy who does everything NBA teams want players to do right now. What am I getting wrong?
Almost everything they want an NBA player to do offensively. Defensively, I think he's kind of a zero. He's also an elite scorer, but he's not a great passer. He doesn't rebound necessarily. He's going to do one thing for you, and that's put the ball in the basket. The other thing I'd say about Tatum is he has not been a great shooter. He was not a great shooter in high school. He was not a great shooter at Duke. He can hit shots. It's not broken, but it's not like this is a guy that's a 40% or a 42% knock knockdown three-point shooter. He's more of a 32, 33% type of three-point shooter in my mind. I think that's probably what he translates at the NBA. So now you're talking about a guy who's going to score most of his points, taking guys off the dribble, posting guys up. He has elite NBA pro moves when it comes to scoring the basketball. But guys like Josh Jackson bring so much more to the table, and a guy that I think is the most underrated player in this draft, Jonathan Isaac out of Florida State.
Right.
Now you're talking about a guy with a 7'1" wingspan, 6'10", elite athlete, can guard 4 positions on the floor, does everything on the floor. He's raw, but you're seeing the league move away from positions to positionless basketball and asking basketball players to do multiple things on the court. Jason Tatum, again, is to me a little bit more of an old school type of player that does that one elite thing, but then doesn't do much else. And, the Warriors would put 4 guys on the floor that could do 3-4 things each as a player, and I think that's what makes them so attractive.
So outside of that, this 4 or 5 people we keep talking about over and over again, who's the guy going at 7 like Steph Curry did, the guy going at 11 like Klay Thompson, not necessarily doing what they do on the court, but that can maybe grow and whatever they're good at, we go, wow, okay, we didn't see that one coming. Why they weren't a lottery pick.
Well, look, and this is also telling that this is a deep draft, right? The reason that we're talking about why is Jason Tatum 4 or 5 is because this is a deep draft, because there's other really good players in this draft, and we talked a little bit about De'Aaron Fox. I mean, De'Aaron Fox to me is a John Wall clone. He is the fastest point guard in this draft, and unlike John Wall, I think he brings a culture aspect. Teams were blown away in talking to him about his IQ, his seriousness, his work ethic. John Wall was much more immature when he came into the league. De'Aaron Fox may be the most mature 18, 19-year-old that we have coming into this draft right now. I think he, too, if he can learn how to shoot the basketball, is a franchise-type player. So now we're like 6 players deep. We're not even talking about Dennis Smith, who is
hearing a lot more about
who's an elite athlete who measured with a 48-inch vertical at the Lakers workout, and probably has only dipped because he tore his ACL his senior year of high school as well. And we're not even talking about Harry Giles, who at the start of his senior year of high school, before he tore his ACL, NBA scouts were telling me this is the best high school prospect since LeBron James. He obviously didn't recover as quickly as they'd hoped with his knee injury, had to have another surgery at the start of his Duke season, never really got into a rhythm. We never got to see the Harry Giles that I saw play for Team USA and the under-18s look like he was the next Kevin Garnett. And I think that he's getting healthier now. He's wowed teams in workout. His explosiveness is coming back. This guy could go 10 to 15 in the draft, and in 3 or 4 years we may be talking about why wasn't he number 1.
That's a really interesting one. Mike and Chad Ford. Let me ask you about 2 bigs. Okay. The kid from Gonzaga, who didn't even start, Zach Collins, who's 7 feet and can shoot from all over the place. How good is he?
He's really good. Not only can he do that, he's bouncy athletically. He protects the rim. He rebounds. He's tough. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. If he had played at Duke or Kentucky and been one of these one-and-dones that got to play big minutes, we would probably be talking about him in this same mix as well. And he is the prototypical NBA big man now because he can do it anywhere on the floor and has the lateral quickness as well to go out and guard guys that are going to come out and stretch on the perimeter.
Is he strong enough? Whatever degree of banging remains for people who are that size? Is he strong enough to do it?
He's not now, but he has the frame to do that. And in a couple of years, I don't think that's going to be a concern at all.
And then the other kid I wanted to ask you about is Markkanen, who is he Kristaps Porzingis? What exactly is he?
He's not, and I think that's the one that's a little bit dangerous. He's not Dirk Nowitzki. He's not Kristaps Porzingis. First of all, he doesn't have any of Porzingis' defensive abilities. He doesn't rebound. He doesn't block shots. He doesn't move as well laterally as Porzingis does. He is a better shooter. In fact, I've had some NBA scouts tell me he may be the single best shooter in this draft. He is an elite shooter in stretching the floor.
7 feet tall, to be clear.
At 7 feet tall. And he can also score off the bounce a little bit, do some of that Dirk step back, but he's not the athlete that Dirk is. I don't think he's quite the competitor that Dirk is. I think when someone says Ryan Anderson or Channing Frye, that feels more to me about a fair comp for a guy like Lauri Markkanen. He'll shoot 40% from 3 in the NBA, and that's a very valuable skill to have for a 7-footer. But he's not going to do the things that Porzingis is going to do on the floor, and that's why when Phil Jackson worked him out and said, "Oh, maybe I can trade Porzingis and get that guy," that's nuts. He will never be Porzingis.
is the sense you get, because you talked to all, do you think the Knicks are going to trade Porzingis?
I can't imagine, but look, it's a little bit like trying to figure out sometimes what the Kings are going to do. With the Knicks, no one really knows. They're so unpredictable, and Phil Jackson's so hard to get a read on. Maybe.
Let's do this again this week if we can. We'd love to have you back. Chad Ford,
Chad.
absolutely doing fantastic work as always. We didn't get any Star Wars in at all.
Disappointing.
We need to do that. No one knows more about Star Wars or loves
truth.
it more than our friend Chad Ford. Mike and Mike, a reminder, also, there are some stories you have to hear to believe. 30 for 30 podcast, all new stories from the producers of the acclaimed 30 for 30 series. Subscribe now in the Listen tab of the ESPN app or Apple Podcast. Chad, seriously, thanks.
Thanks,
Great to see you as always.
Every deck is made for standing on, but there's only one that's always had a way of standing out. So if you're looking to bring more style, comfort, and creativity to your life outdoors, call on the brand that's known for making the most in outdoor living. From decking, railing, and lighting to furniture, fencing, and framing. At Trex, we're engineering what's next in outdoor living. To learn more about all of the outdoor solutions Trex has to offer, call 1-800-289-TREX or visit Trex.com. That's TREX.com.
Well, Greeny, looks like our last baseball season together.
Yeah, we're rounding third and walking off winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business with instant free nights at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
Just pull up with no reservation and redeem La Quinta Returns loyalty points for a free night that same night just by using the La Quinta app.
That's like hitting a grand slam.
With the La Quinta app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out their summer rates at lq.com. All right, we are Mike and Mike, and every afternoon here on ESPN Radio, Coast to Coast, you hear the right time with Bomani Jones, and Bomani jumps in with us whenever we can grab a few minutes with him here, and he's standing by and ready to go. So, Bo, I'm just going to give you the overall floor here on what has been, as it always is now, a fascinating week of conversation in the NBA leading up to the draft. It's 1,000 times more interesting than the regular season. So, to you, what is the most significant thing you have seen going on, and what do you make of it?
That LeBron and the possibility that he might leave in 2018 seems to be pushing so much craziness that's going on right now in the NBA. And I get the argument totally that the Warriors are so good that they're making everybody feel like, oh man, you got to hurry up and make a run. But the truth is, for Cleveland, they're on the clock. I don't think that you could operate under the assumption that LeBron's coming back in 2018. That makes you start saying, hey, can we go get Paul George? Hey, can we go get Jimmy Butler? So forth and so on. And now all of this is going because unlike these previous years where we felt like we had no idea what LeBron was going to do, I think most of us feel like, hey, if you had to guess, he's probably going to wind up leaving. And now the Pacers, who you would think wouldn't be able to find much of a rental market for Paul George, now the Cavs have to be interested because that rental means more if you only got 1 year LeBron James and everything gets crazy over there. Then you hear about Jimmy Butler maybe wanting to go play for the maybe want to go play for the Cavs. Why? Because they got to max out that last year of LeBron James.
Why do you think LeBron? I'm still not buying in on that. Why all of a sudden do we think he's going to go to L.A. just because we hear he wants to get in the Hollywood world? He has a house out there, but the dude has a chance to get to maybe 3 more finals in the East with Cleveland, yet he's going to give all that up to try and get a team to compete with Golden State and go to the West. I personally don't understand the thought process.
Yeah, I tell you this, though. The all of a sudden part is where this gets interesting because I'd agree with you if I felt like this was all of a sudden. But I was talking to somebody about a week and a half ago, and I looked at him and I said, look, man, I've been hearing that LeBron is going to L.A., not even that this was a chance that he was going. And when information gets down to me, a whole hell of a lot more people got it before I did. So I was so I'm wondering, when are people going to talk about hearing this about LeBron? And then shortly thereafter, everybody then came out and said, okay, well, yeah, I've heard this. Well, yeah, I've heard this. And people have been hearing this now for 6 to 9 months. This isn't something that just came up here. And that's why I'm leaning toward thinking this is probably going to be his last season there, just because of for how long that we have heard this. But I do think you're right. In Cleveland, they might be set up to make a nice long run and to keep this thing going. But again, with LeBron, I guess you could argue none of us really know what exactly his goals are.
Mike and Mike, Bomani Jones, Dwight Howard traded to Charlotte. What is it, Mike? His 4th team in 5 years or whatever the numbers are. It's his 5th team
overall,
total.
yeah.
So, Bomani, as he approaches the end of his career, what do we say of Dwight Howard? What was he, what is he, and was he in the NBA?
Well, what he was the best big man of his generation. I think it's 3 or 4 time defensive player of the year. He even got shortchanged one that year. Tyson Chandler won because Dwight wound up getting hurt in the year. That's when his back went out. Like, we spend so much time talking about what Dwight Howard is not that we really ignore what Dwight Howard is. Remember, while we're looking at LeBron in Cleveland saying you needed more help, Dwight got a team to the NBA Finals going through LeBron before LeBron had ever managed to get there. He's got 2 things that he'll never be able to overcome, I think, in the eyes of a lot of people. One of them is the Stan Van Gundy incident, and the other one is Kobe Bryant told all his minions that Dwight was soft, and then all of a sudden in their minds, Dwight wound up being soft. But no, I mean, he is one of the great players of all time, one of the great players of his era, and great enough that you forget about the fact that this dude was undersized. Like, you go see him stand next to Kevin Durant. Like, we're not talking about Wilt Chamberlain here and just being so much bigger than everybody else that he played against. So it's always wild to me that when we get to these moments and people laugh at Dwight so much and be like, oh man, all these teams wound up getting rid of him. Orlando let him go because they weren't going to be able to keep him. The Lakers fought like hell to keep him, putting up billboards and stuff. He wound up walking. The Houston thing was an odd fit, but he walked as a free agent. This thing in Atlanta looked like a bad idea from the jump, but he still put up something like 13 rebounds a game or something like that. Like, he's still a good player. He's just getting traded now also to an irrelevant franchise, and we assume that it's a joke when anybody gets sent to the Hornets.
Yeah, I could see that, but talk about a team that's been irrelevant, but certainly with a bigger past and a bigger name, and we talk about it, that's the Knicks. With Kristaps Porzingis, I mean, here's a guy way closer to the beginning of his career where Dwight Howard's close to the end of his career, and the trade now, the possibility of the Knicks trading him, I mean, I don't even know where to go with this. What do you think?
Well, it either is Porzingis trying to work his way out of New York City, or it's Phil Jackson trying to get himself fired, because I just can't see any possible upside for Phil or anybody else to trade the one glimmer of hope that your franchise has. Like, do you think that you can get Porzingis and package him with a bad contract and then get something back in return? Because otherwise, Porzingis doesn't make enough money for you to get anything out of a trade for him. Now, I'm not as big on him as other people are. Like, I see what the future might be for him, but he's going to have to start guarding somebody and not fouling people every 2 minutes when he gets on the floor. But I think if you're the Knicks, the only way you're really talking about trading Kristaps Porzingis is if you were trying to get off your job and still get to keep your money. But to be fair, also, we've got some people reporting that the Knicks are just kind of sort of taking calls on this. I don't see how you take phone call the first. Hey, we're thinking about Porzingis. You want to think about something else?
Yeah. Bomani Jones is with us. Draft coming up tomorrow night. Who do you love? Which players in this draft? Forget fit, forget anything else. Who do you look at and say, this kid's going to be an NBA star?
I mean, I guess if there's one I'd love, it'd have to be De'Aaron Fox, because he's the one that I've seen put up like a truly lovable performance. 2 of them, the ones he put up against UCLA. And I guess the idea of that fast point guard going up and down the floor, even if he's not shooting so well right now, he is probably more fun for me to watch than anybody else in the draft. And I am one of the people who will be honest enough to tell you the truth that I was not staying up to no damn 1 o'clock in the morning to watch 9-win Washington just because Markelle Fultz was good. I feel like a whole lot of us are going into this draft talking about Markelle Fultz, and not even Bill Walton was going to get us to stay up late enough to watch those games. No disrespect to him. We just didn't get to see it.
That's exactly right. That's why you lean on the Chad Fords of the world and people like that, and they all say he's a cut above, and I guess we'll have to wait and see. Final thought for you, Bomani, as you are down there in Miami with Lebitard and company. Were you actually present or nearby when Stugotz went to the full Feinbaum thing yesterday, and if so, what was your reaction?
I came after it was done. I saw it on the internet like everybody else, and then I walked in there and I saw somebody with a Paul Feinbaum haircut, and I thought it was Paul Feinbaum, so I was afraid that me and him was going to have to tangle. Like, once I realized it was actually just my buddy Stugotz, I found it to be very entertaining.
It was very entertaining, and it was – he looked scary. He looked like Paul, except
it's eerie,
except 50 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
Have we found out if Paul finds this funny yet? By the way, has anybody sent a memo about that?
I think he does find it funny.
I think Paul would have a good attitude about this, though I'm not going to be the one to ask him.
Bomani Jones with us anytime we can get a couple of minutes to chat, and you hear him this afternoon and every afternoon here on ESPN Radio, The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Thank you, Bo.
Thanks, Bo.
All right, you guys have a good one.
That's Bomani Jones with us. I thought I saw, I guess I shouldn't say this as though it is certain. I thought I saw Paul laughing along with this. Did I miss that?
I'm sure Paul was.
I mean, I think he's good with it.
I don't think there's any doubt about it, but it was incredible.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, Stugotz from the Dan Le Batard Show lost a bet on the NBA Finals, and the bet was that he would have to basically make himself look exactly like Paul Feinbaum. They shaved just enough of his head that he looks like he's got Paul's hair.
They actually brought the Dollar Shave Club guys in here, and they're the ones that shaved the top of his head. He put on glasses and a suit, coat and tie, and was talking like Paul Feinbaum the entire morning.
I will say this. I didn't hear it. I wasn't able to listen to it. He was doing like the accent and everything?
Oh, no. He was just talking SEC football.
Okay, yeah.
College football,
because I just saw it online afterwards.
It was fantastic.
And the picture, I mean, it's remarkable. It's incredible.
It is incredible what they did. And today they strap him to a lie detector.
Now, the picture that we have up of him right now, for those watching on ESPN2, that's one of the ones I saw. But you got to get the one where he's actually in the suit.
Yeah.
Because the one where he's actually in the suit, I've never seen Paul Feinbaum not in a suit.
Right.
Paul's one of those guys who's always in a suit. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Paul owns casual attire. So it's so a part of what he looks like. You don't even realize it until you see it. Like if you saw Paul Feinbaum in a T-shirt and a pair of jeans, it would be jarring. Okay, right now, up on our screen on ESPN2, that's the picture I'm talking about. That is eerie how much he looks like
It's really
Paul,
good. Again, except for 50 pounds heavier.
He's got a fatter face. Paul is a very skinny man.
The thing Stugatz took out of it was the fact that when he got his face shaved and his head shaved, he couldn't get over the fact of the amount of chins that he saw.
Yeah.
He was very, very disturbed. He said that the suit he wore was the same one for his daughter's bat mitzvah, which was a while ago.
Right.
And he said he thinks he's gained at least 40 pounds since then and was disgusted in the way
How
he
old
looked.
is his daughter now?
I think she's 32.
No,
I don't know. No, she's a young teenager.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It can't have been that long ago.
No, it's not that long ago. No.
Just the way you said that. He can't have gained 40 pounds.
Oh, he can. He could put it on quick.
It was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
I'm being told. It was the bat mitzvah was 2 months ago.
He eats a lot.
I was going to say, because I don't know exactly how many kids he has, but I remember he just had a bat mitzvah
I believe 2.
recently.
Yeah, he does. And coaches there, the lacrosse.
And disgracefully.
Well. Yes.
His coaching is a disgrace.
He is.
Oh, they're twins. He has twin daughters.
Yes.
Okay.
Interesting coaching technique that he has.
Oh, no. One man's interesting as another man's disgraceful. Yeah. The authority should come and they should take him forcefully away from these young people who are impressionable and deserve far better. Michael Seward tweets at us, why aren't we talking about Paul George and LeBron playing for the Clippers? The Lakers have been a dumpster fire recently. Listen,
we'll see.
We are talking about
Jerry West is there, and Jerry West is there for a reason.
I got a good column on that here. I didn't realize I was going to get to that tweet so quickly. I've got a column that I can read to you that suggests that is the exact reason that Jerry West is there. He's the guy who brought Shaq to the Lakers. He's the guy who closed the deal on Kevin Durant to the Warriors. Jerry West he's got that kind of respect. And I think that people are speculating the primary reason he's in L.A. right now is to try to attract LeBron James there rather than the Lakers.
Listen, he's there to build a championship. So it will be interesting where it goes. Brian tweets, this is interesting. If Lonzo goes to the Lakers, will the feud between the dad and LeBron keep James from playing there? Feud, again, how you want to define feud. LeVar brought up the pressure that LeBron's kids are going to be playing under, being the son of LeBron James, as opposed to LeVar Ball, who averaged 2 points a game in college. His son really don't have to do much to surpass his career, where he said LeBron's kids are going to have a lot of pressure. And basically LeBron said, keep my family out of your mouth. Don't mention my family. So interesting thought.
Yes, I don't think LeBron likes him. I don't think he's alone in that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would have anything to do with it. I think Lonzo is a player, from everything that everyone says about him. And look, I've watched the kid play like 4 or 5 times in my life. I didn't see every game he played last year. But the way he plays seems like it would be an excellent fit with someone like LeBron. So I personally think that I can't imagine that LeBron James, who has his whole life planned out as thoroughly and completely as he clearly seems to, and has done such a good job with it overall, is going to make any decision based upon LeVar Ball. I just have a very hard time imagining that.
And then 16 Rings says, do you believe that the Lakers will give the Warriors a run for their money if the Lakers get Paul George and LeBron? Depends on who else they get. Remember, LeBron will be another year older, closer to the end of his career. They have LeBron James now playing the best he's played, Kyrie, who handles the ball better than just about anybody in the league, Kevin Love, who had been certainly a star in the league, and now you're talking about a year older LeBron and a Paul George. Tell me who else you got. Otherwise, no. Why would we think that they would be closer to beating them without knowing the other pieces there than just saying you have LeBron and Paul George?
Well, let's see who they have to give up along the way.
Exactly.
But if they don't have to give up that much along the way, and Brook Lopez is just coming there for a year.
Brook
it's
Lopez,
his contract they want.
Then you have Lonzo Ball. We'll have a year under his belt of him, so let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Brandon Ingram will have 2 years.
Magic Johnson.
Right.
So let's
They'll
see.
have a bunch of young kids.
Yeah.
So that's why the Clippers might be the more appealing option. Look, there's a lot of things out there. Let me very quickly, Sam Amick in the USA Today is the one who wrote this. Why Jerry West is key in Los Angeles. The grand plan, he writes, for West and his new Clippers colleagues, including Doc Rivers, etc., targeting the biggest fish in next summer's free agency, LeBron James. According to 2 people with knowledge of the situation, West's potential ability to improve the Clippers' chances of landing LeBron in free agency was a significant factor in his hiring and in the willingness of owner Steve Ballmer to pay West between $4 and $5 million annually. The people spoke to USA Today Sports on the condition of anonymity, blah, blah, blah. The point is that next summer, just listen to this.
Yeah.
Here's the people who will be free agents next summer. LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Russell Westbrook, DeMarcus Cousins, Paul George, Isaiah Thomas, Brook Lopez, and DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah.
Next summer is going to be a very interesting time in the NBA. Keep the tweets coming. 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Nothing makes a summer birthday or anniversary more magical than 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you get another dozen absolutely free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. All right, wasn't this interesting, Mike? Yesterday we talked at some length and showed you the video of Anthony Rizzo of the Cubs taking out the catcher of the San Diego Padres on a questionable play.
Right.
And what we learned as the day went on, Joe Torre spoke to Rizzo, told him that he did break the rule, but that there would be no discipline.
No discipline, no fine, no suspension, no nothing.
And that, I think, is about the right answer as far as I'm concerned.
That's fine. I had no problem with it, but we didn't think it was going to end there.
And it didn't. Did you hear the comment from Andy Green, who was the manager of the San Diego Padres, when they asked him, because he was the one who had a problem with the slide in the first place. He said he thinks that's a dirty play and all the rest of that. So you and I both assumed, well, Rizzo's going to lead off the game tonight, and he's going to take one directly in the ribs. The manager of the Padres, Andy Green, said there would be no such thing.
This is what I've always asked. What do you accomplish by hitting somebody? You accomplish nothing. You put a man on first base and you give him an opportunity to win a baseball game. You don't all of a sudden, gain the high moral ground because you chose to retaliate. You don't all of a sudden get to pound your chest because you were man enough to throw a ball at somebody's back. I think it's absolutely asinine to even take that approach.
So they didn't drill him. Rizzo gets up to the plate. What does he do?
He hit a home run.
He hit a home run.
He seems to lead off every game with a home run.
Yeah, he really does. But that thought process, so immediately we turn to our baseball guy in Paul Hembekides. Hembo, your thoughts on that?
I wouldn't play for him. I mean, objectively, he's saying the right thing, of course. But I'd be very curious what Austin Hedges and other members of that team think behind closed doors, whether or not their manager has their back.
Hembo's an idiot.
See,
okay, let's just talk here. Okay, the courtesy on that soundbite, by the way, was the mighty 1090 AM. The direction that the world is going, sometimes more slowly than we may like, is towards sensible, reasonable, human thinking. Right? So the idea that started in 1890-something, 130 years later, that the appropriate way to respond to something in which it wasn't a blatantly dirty play. I mean, I think that the appropriate thing here would be for Rizzo to go up to Hedges and say, hey, sorry, my bad. I didn't mean to hurt you there. It might have been a little closer than I meant it to be, whatever. I didn't mean for that to happen. And for them to shake hands, and maybe he sends him a lovely gift. And then everyone gets on with their lives. And that's the right way to handle something like this. And the manager got it right.
Oh, my God.
You disagree?
Oh, yeah. As I said, staring at a home run or doing that doesn't deserve it. This is something physical. Was it against the rules? Was it against, or did Joe Torre say you broke our rule?
Yes, you and I both believe that it was a violation of the rule.
Drill him. You want to send him a basket after that, go ahead. But drill him first. I'm with you, Hembo. Right in the tuchus. Or the rib cage. But not the head.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's hard. I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym. It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.